Today we're going to be talking about the Fool and the Fool's story and the 22 cards that make up the major arcana. But we're going to really talk about and hone in on the story at first, right? Because the story is beautiful and it explains a lot about what each card is and what it's supposed to represent, and the story of the soul and how it moves through these 22 cards. Now, before I go into it, I would like you to hit that subscribe button and that bell. That way when I bring something in new, you get notified right away. All right, so here we go. The Fool story, also sometimes known as the hero story. Just replace the fool with the hero and boom, same thing. And the Fool is really the central character in the story. Obviously he's the first card, but really the zero card, and he is carefree and naive, and he knows nothing about the journey that lies ahead of him. And so he starts embarking, right? And you see in many decks, the Fool, he's kind of like going off a cliff, like, I'm leaping off this cliff. And as he's going, he encounters two people, the Magician and the High Priestess. Now, these are represented as the divine male and the divine female, and they each give him something before he continues on his journey. The Magician, again being the divine male, starts showing him all of the things, all of the skills and trades that's going to be going on in front of him, giving him the knowledge of all of the four elements. And if you put them together, you can get these divine things. And then the High Priestess reminds him that everything has opposites, that there are these beautiful mysteries that we may have to get a little bit emotional for, that really might not constitute into a physical thing, but it's power and it's beauty, and again, it's the opposite. It's mysterious. She happens to give him a scroll for him to read, teaching him that everything comes with divine time. Okay, very important, because that was only cards 1 and 2. So we see the metaphysical divine male and divine female, and now we come into the physical, right? The Fool is born and he runs into mom and dad, the Empress and the Emperor, and they are the external embodiment, mom and dad. The Fool really perceives them as the mother figure and the father figure, and mom being nurturing and giving and loving, supportive, all of the emotions that, learning of emotions that the Fool may need, and learns encouragement and unconditional love. And through the Emperor, through dad, he learns a little bit more structure. He gets guidance and learns protection, and he learns boundaries. So he learns a lot. He learns how to be a leader and all of those more masculine things that people would identify with. As the Fool goes and grows, just like anybody else, it's time for school. School comes, and this is where he learns more structure. He gets educated, and now this is in the form of the Hierophant. Now, the Hierophant can sometimes be alluded to in a religious card, so we could kind of think like this could be like a private school, that your own religion is, I know there's private Catholic schools. I was in one for a little while, but so you have these, educational, these are your higher educational resources in the form of the Hierophant. So he gets this education, and after getting this education, he finds somebody and he's like, ooh la la, what's going on? Isn't that somebody that I would just love to spend the rest of my life with? And this is where the lovers come into play, and the Fool learns who maybe his opposite is. Here he learns the challenges of union of both, of both of his polarities, the positive and the negative. He learns about relationships romantically and sexually. So he learns all of these different things and how they are challenges and how love can be very challenging. His journey then eventually takes him to the Charioteer. And this character teaches him the important lessons that a character would need to know to pursue his own goals. Because he's now very proud and in control, and he's assertive. And his first challenge comes through the strength card, and knowing that he's got to have that strength to be able to pursue his desires. He's got to be able to have that strength to be able to carry on no matter how hard the path may be. These are his desires. And that strength comes from within to overcome obstacles that may come in his way. He also learns patience, and that it's not about brute force. And then at that point, through that strength, he happens upon the hermit. And the hermit then, starts giving him this education about looking within and introspection. He has to go inwards when he starts having these questions of why, why do people do this and why do people do that and why are we here and what's the meaning of everything? These are all questions that he starts thinking about. And the hermit comes and he says, well, you got to look within. The questions of why for a lot of these questions are deep within you. Now that he's starting to see his own light and he's starting to feel empowered about the things that he's learned about himself, he kind of starts seeing this wheel, the wheel of fortune, the wheel of tides, and how everything turns, everything has its place, everything comes in cycles, just like there are the cycles of the seasons, right? The cycle of the year. In this way, this wheel of fortune, anything that comes up will also come back down because that's just its cycle. But then we come back up again. But this also shows him that life has consequences because everything comes and goes in its tides, and that the universe does work in harmony. And he starts, thinking about his transgressions in the past. And this is where justice comes into play. And through justice, all of those wrongs can be righted. Any of those transgressions he has can be fixed. And instead of focusing on worldly possessions at this point, he focuses on more of this growth, right, that he has. He's got this new perspective, this new lens. He comes into, like the Hanged Man, he starts seeing things from a different way, from a different lens and a different perspective. He believes that there is sacrifice to the things that you want, to the things that will satisfy you, bring you peace. And that the truth is that if he relinquishes some of this control, this struggle, and just goes with the flow, things will come in as he wants. As life comes, everything in life, as it comes, it must go. And so death comes for him. And as death approaches the Fool to show him his life and everything that he has done to this point, and starts, he starts clearing out the closet, so to speak, for the Fool. And the Fool decides, okay, this is my ending. And he goes in peace. Because, you can't outrun, blah, blah, blah. You can't outrun death. You can't. But now he is wiser and he's more confident to proceed forward. By experiencing the extremes, he knows how to be more stable in the middle. And then appears an angel, and this is Temperance. And Temperance tells him that anything is possible if he has the right balance. You can have these extremes and you just balance. You just have this balance in between. And so he learns balance. And with this balance comes a little harmony. And then, with the angel, and he presses on and he says, okay, now the angel taught me more balance. And he comes across this mountain, and he knows here is where the devil is. Where this mountain is where the devil is. He looks around and he realizes when he comes to see the devil that everybody that he sees that he's around, it's almost like they don't want to go. They don't want to leave. They willingly stay in these places and let the devil torment them. They stay in their own torment. This is where he learns that if he acknowledges that shadow part of himself and kind of integrates it, he acknowledges his faults and he learns and he integrates, he can heal and he can move on. But then out of nowhere comes this giant lightning strike from above. It's like the lightning comes from the sky and it shatters all the walls, it shatters all the windows, it knocks everything all helter-skelter. And there is this big sudden change that goes on around him. And there's a lot of shock. And it comes down to this revelation where he learns about, now he's got to rebuild this fallen structure, right? This fallen tower, this fallen mountain. And, because it's been torn down, but how is he going to build this back up? Remember, like I tell everybody, that your foundation is waterproof, right? Because this is where you learn if your foundation isn't good enough, it's gonna all come tumbling down. And so he rebuilds this tower, and the star comes, and the star gives him this hope and this light that not everything is lost, that things can still be saved. And she gives the fool some fruit and some water, almost like seeds being planted into the earth for new things to come. As she leaves, she starts twinkling in the sky, and he notices the moon. And the moon also gives him a little bit more light, but the moon is mysterious and it's dark and it just barely lights the path in front of him. And he has to use this intuition of his to continue moving forward. He starts finding it hard to navigate, and this is where he learns to trust himself, to trust that inner intuition, and that eventually the sun will come, because everything comes in cycles, right? Eventually, as the moon goes, up comes the sun. And so the sun is shining brightly on him, and it gives him promise and warmth and joy. And the sky is beautiful and bright. The fool finally has answers going, as he moves forward, of all of the things maybe that life has to offer. And he feels more exhilarated. He now has balance. His spirit now has balance. And as he moves forward, he comes to his ancestors, the judgment card, right? He comes to his ancestors and he's like, look at all of the things that I have learned. Let me show you. Let me tell you all of the things that I have gathered from my experience, right? Trying to unify and reconnect with that greater unconscious. And since he's ready to get reintegrated back into the world, he completes his journey. And his journey hints that because of cycles, whenever one journey ends, a new journey becomes anew. And so he gathers his stuff and he finishes, and he's no longer nearly as naive as he was before. And he finds himself standing at this very familiar ledge that he's about to step off of again. Only this time, he knows a little something. And it really shows that through this story that we are all the fool. And through lessons and through integrating these lessons into our lives, we can continue our path forward. We can continue the path that lays ahead of us. Thank you very much for hanging out with me. I'll see you guys next time. Namaste and God bless.